Welcome back to Truth Bombs, where we uncover the stories that prove karma isn't just real. Sometimes it needs a little help from someone who knows exactly how to deliver it. Today's story is about what happens when you betray the wrong woman, especially when that woman happens to be a forensic accountant who's forgotten just how dangerous she can be. This is the story of Cordelia Blackwood, a woman who gave up her career to support her husband's dreams, only to discover that while she was playing the perfect wife, he was playing a completely different game. But here's the thing about forensic accountants. They're trained to follow money trails, uncover hidden assets, and expose financial crimes. And when Cordelia finally decided to use those skills on her own life, well, let's just say some people learned the hard way that the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous. So buckle up, because this isn't just a story about infidelity. This is a masterclass in strategic revenge, where every move was calculated, every piece of evidence was gathered, and every consequence was earned. This is the Vanishing Act. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life, or so it seemed. Cordelia Blackwood had what most people would call the perfect life. Married to Lysander Blackwood, one of the most successful investment advisors in the city, living in a beautiful colonial home in the most exclusive neighborhood, part of all the right social circles. From the outside, they were the golden couple. Him with his charm and business acumen, her with her quiet elegance and supportive nature. But what most people didn't know about Cordelia was that before she became Mrs. Lysander Blackwood, she'd been one of the most sought-after forensic accountants in the state. She could trace money through the most complex webs of shell companies, expose embezzlement schemes that had fooled auditors for years, and had personally sent more white-collar criminals to prison than most prosecutors. She'd given all that up 8 years ago when she married Lysander. He'd convinced her that his career was taking off, that he needed a wife who could focus on building their life together, hosting the right dinner parties, making the connections that would help his business grow. "You can always go back to work later," he'd said. "Right now, I need you by my side." So Cordelia had hung up her calculator, so to speak, and became the perfect investment advisor's wife. She hosted elegant dinner parties where Lysander could charm potential clients. She volunteered for all the right charities, ensuring their name appeared in all the society pages. She managed their household with the same precision she'd once used to track financial irregularities, making sure every detail of their life was perfect. And for 8 years, she thought it was working. Lysander's business was thriving. They had everything they'd dreamed of. Sure, sometimes she missed the thrill of a complex investigation, the satisfaction of exposing corruption, but she'd made her choice. She was building something with the man she loved. The first crack in her perfect world came on a Tuesday morning in March. Cordelia was reviewing their personal finances, something she'd always handled since numbers were her thing, when she noticed something odd. A transfer she didn't remember authorizing. $5,000 moved from their joint savings to an account she didn't recognize. "Lysander," she called out when he came down for breakfast, looking as handsome and confident as always in his perfectly tailored suit. "There's a transfer here I don't remember. Account ending in 7749? He barely glanced at the statement as he poured his coffee. "Oh, that. New investment opportunity. Short-term thing. Don't worry about it." Cordelia felt that familiar tingle, the one she used to get when something in an audit didn't add up quite right, but she pushed it down. This was her husband, not a case. She was being paranoid. "Next time maybe just give me a heads up," she said lightly. "You know how I like to keep track of everything." Lysander kissed her forehead. "Of course, darling. I'll be better about that. You know how I get when I'm focused on a deal." He left for work, and Cordelia told herself she was being paranoid. The transfer was probably exactly what he said it was. She was letting her investigative instincts create problems where none existed. But over the next few weeks, more little things started adding up. More transfers to accounts she didn't recognize. Lysander working later and later, often not coming home until after midnight. Phone calls he'd take in another room, speaking in hushed tones. Credit card charges at restaurants she'd never been to, always for two people. The old Cordelia, the forensic accountant, would have started digging immediately. But the new Cordelia, the wife, kept making excuses. Business was booming. Lysander was working hard. She should be grateful, not suspicious. It was the jewelry charge that finally broke through her denial. $15,000 at Cartier, on a day when Lysander had supposedly been in meetings all afternoon. She'd gotten no jewelry. It wasn't their anniversary, her birthday, or any special occasion. That night, when Lysander came home at 1 a.m., claiming he'd been working late on a complicated portfolio restructure, Cordelia made a decision that would change everything. She was going to find out exactly what her husband was really doing. Chapter 2. The investigation begins. The next morning after Lysander left for work, Cordelia sat in her home office staring at 8 years' worth of financial records spread across her desk. It felt strange to be looking at bank statements with investigative eyes again, but once she started, the old skills came flooding back. She began with the obvious discrepancies, the mysterious transfers, the unexplained charges, the pattern of unusual activity that had started about 6 months ago. But as she dug deeper, what she found made her blood run cold. This wasn't just an affair. This was systematic financial manipulation on a scale that took her breath away. Lysander had been slowly, methodically moving money out of their joint accounts and into accounts she couldn't access. Not large amounts that would trigger her attention, but steady streams of transfers disguised as investment opportunities, business expenses, or charitable donations. Over the past 6 months, nearly $200,000 had vanished from their accounts. But that was just the beginning. Using her forensic skills and some of her old contacts, Cordelia started tracing those mysterious account numbers. What she found made her hands shake as she typed. Lysander hadn't just been stealing from their marriage. He'd been stealing from his clients. The account ending in 7749 belonged to something called SC Holdings, LLC. A little more digging revealed that SC Holdings was registered to one Seraphina Cross, a 28-year-old marketing consultant who happened to be one of Lysander's newest clients. Cordelia's hands trembled as she pulled up Seraphina's social media profiles. Beautiful, blonde, the kind of woman who posted photos from expensive restaurants and exotic vacations with captions like, "Blessed," and "Living my best life." Recent posts showed her flashing a massive engagement ring, gushing about wedding planning and her perfect fiancé. The timestamps on her vacation photos matched exactly with periods when Lysander had claimed to be attending out-of-town conferences. Cordelia sat back in her chair, the full picture becoming crystal clear. Lysander wasn't just having an affair. He was funding his mistress's lifestyle by embezzling money from his clients' accounts, funneling it through fake LLCs, and using their own marriage as cover. When the time came to divorce her, their accounts would be empty, and she'd be left with nothing while he and Seraphina rode off into the sunset with millions of stolen money. For a moment, the betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that Cordelia couldn't breathe. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of supporting his career, giving up her own dreams, playing the perfect wife. And this was how he repaid her. But then something else kicked in. Something that had been dormant for 8 years but was now wide awake and absolutely furious. Cordelia Blackwood wasn't just a betrayed wife. She was a forensic accountant who had just uncovered the financial crime of the decade. And she was going to make sure everyone involved paid the price. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in years. "Kane, Morrison and Associates. How may I help you?" "Is Thaddeus Kane available? Tell him it's Cordelia Blackwood, and I need the best divorce attorney in the state." Chapter 3. The Ally. Thaddeus Kane hadn't changed much in the 10 years since law school. Still tall and lean, still had that intense focus that had made him the top student in their class, still wore glasses that made him look more like a professor than the shark he'd become in the courtroom. But when he looked at Cordelia across his mahogany conference table, there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there in law school, a warmth that made her remember why she'd always felt safe around him. "I have to admit," Thaddeus said, closing the folder containing all the evidence Cordelia had gathered over the past 2 weeks. "In 15 years of practicing divorce law, I've never had a client walk in with a more thoroughly documented case of financial fraud. You've essentially done the prosecution's job for them." Cordelia managed a small smile. "Occupational hazard. Once a forensic accountant, always a forensic accountant, I guess." "Why did you give it up?" The question was quiet, personal in a way that surprised her. "Lysander thought it would be better for his career if I focused on supporting him. Said I could always go back to work later." The words tasted bitter now. Thaddeus was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, there was an edge to his voice that hadn't been there before. "Well, we're going to make sure later comes sooner than he expected." They spent the next 3 hours going through strategy. Thaddeus explained that with the evidence Cordelia had gathered, she could not only divorce Lysander, but ensure he faced criminal charges for embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering. The financial forensics were so clear, so thoroughly documented, that conviction was virtually guaranteed. "But here's what I want you to understand, Cordelia," Thaddeus said, leaning forward. "Once we file these papers, once we alert the authorities, there's no going back. Lysander's life as he knows it will be over. His business, his reputation, his freedom, all of it will be gone. Are you prepared for that?" Cordelia thought about the woman she'd been 8 years ago, the one who'd sent dozens of financial criminals to prison without a second thought, the one who'd believed that justice mattered more than comfort, that truth mattered more than maintaining appearances. He stole from his clients, Thaddeus, elderly people who trusted him with their retirement savings, young families trying to build a future. He didn't just betray me, he betrayed everyone who believed in him. So yes, I'm prepared for that. "Good." Thaddeus smiled, and for a moment she saw a flash of the boy she'd known in law school, the one who'd shared her belief that the law should protect people, not just profit them. "Because I have an idea that's going to make this even more satisfying." "I'm listening." "Your evidence shows that Seraphina Cross isn't just the recipient of stolen funds. She's actively participating in the money laundering through her LLC. That makes her a co-conspirator, not just a mistress. And according to her social media, she's getting married in 6 weeks to Camden Whitmore." Cordelia's eyes widened. She knew that name. Camden Whitmore was old Philadelphia money, a federal judge's son, the kind of man whose family had been attending the same country club for 4 generations. "If we time this right," Thaddeus continued, "we can make sure the FBI raid on Lysander's office happens right around the time Miss Cross is supposed to be saying, 'I do.' Because once Camden Whitmore's family discovers their future daughter-in-law has been living off stolen money and is about to be indicted for financial crimes, the wedding will be off, and she'll be just as socially destroyed as Lysander," Cordelia finished. "Exactly. But here's the beauty of it. We don't have to do anything vindictive or illegal. We just have to let the truth come out at the most inconvenient possible moment for both of them." Cordelia felt something she hadn't experienced in months, genuine excitement. "How long do we have to build the case?" "With what you've already gathered. I can have the divorce papers ready to file within a week. The criminal referral to the FBI will take a bit longer to coordinate, but if we time it right—" Thaddeus smiled, and Cordelia remembered why he'd been so formidable in moot court. "Let's just say that Miss Cross's engagement party might be more memorable than she's planning." As Cordelia left Thaddeus's office, she felt something shifting inside her. For 8 years, she'd been Lysander's wife, his support system, his perfect accessory. But now, for the first time in nearly a decade, she was herself again. She was Cordelia Blackwood, forensic accountant, and she had work to do. Chapter 4: The Performance. Over the next 2 weeks, Cordelia gave the performance of her lifetime. She continued to play the loving, trusting wife while secretly gathering evidence and coordinating with Thaddeus and the FBI. It was easier than she'd expected. Lysander was so confident in his deception, so sure that his naive little wife suspected nothing, that he became careless. He started coming home even later, sometimes not until 3 or 4 a.m. He'd stopped bothering to hide the receipts for expensive dinners and hotel rooms. He even started taking phone calls from Seraphina in the house, thinking Cordelia was safely upstairs or in the garden. "Yes, sweetheart. Just a few more weeks," she heard him say one evening as she quietly approached his study. "The Cayman account will be fully transferred by the end of the month, and then we can start making our exit strategy." Cordelia smiled to herself as she retreated upstairs. Exit strategy indeed. She started accepting more social invitations, particularly ones she knew would put her in Seraphina's orbit. It was remarkable how easy it was to run into someone when you knew their schedule, their favorite restaurants, their gym routine. And Seraphina, bless her heart, never suspected that the elegant older woman who kept showing up at the same charity events and yoga classes was the wife of her lover. "Oh, you're getting married," Cordelia exclaimed one afternoon, when she accidentally ended up next to Seraphina at a charity luncheon. "How exciting!" "When's the big day?" Seraphina practically glowed as she showed off her ring. 3 weeks from Saturday. I'm so nervous but so excited. Camden, that's my fiancé. His family is throwing us an engagement party this weekend. Very fancy, very exclusive." "How wonderful," Cordelia said, making a mental note to update Thaddeus on the timeline. "You must be so in love." "Oh, I am," Seraphina gushed. "He's perfect, successful, handsome, comes from such a good family, and he absolutely adores me, spoils me rotten." "And what does he do?" "He's in finance, like my—" Seraphina caught herself just in time. "Like several men I know. There's something so attractive about a man who knows how to handle money, don't you think?" "Absolutely," Cordelia agreed, thinking about how Lysander had handled money, by stealing it. Good financial management is so important in a marriage. That evening, Cordelia was extra affectionate with Lysander. She made his favorite dinner, wore the dress he'd always loved, acted like the devoted wife he thought she was. "You seem happy tonight," he observed as they sat on their back patio with wine. "I am happy," Cordelia said, and it was true. "I've been thinking about our future lately, about what comes next for us." Lysander's smile was so smug, so self-satisfied, that it took all of Cordelia's acting skills not to throw her wine in his face. "I've been thinking about that too, darling. Big changes are coming. I can feel it." "What kind of changes?" "Well, the business has been going so well. I'm thinking it might be time to expand. Maybe relocate. I've been looking at some opportunities in warmer climates." "Really? Like where?" "Maybe the Caribbean. Somewhere we could really start fresh, you know." Cordelia nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds wonderful. Very exotic." "It would be a completely new beginning for us," Lysander said, and Cordelia almost laughed at the irony. He was planning to divorce her the moment they got to whatever Caribbean paradise he'd chosen, leaving her stranded and penniless while he and Seraphina enjoyed their stolen millions. "I can't wait," she said, raising her wine glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," Lysander echoed, clinking his glass against hers. As Cordelia smiled at her husband, she couldn't help but think that he was absolutely right. Big changes were coming, and there would definitely be a new beginning. Just not the one he was expecting. Chapter 5. The Engagement Party. The Whitmore family estate was exactly what Cordelia had expected. Old money elegance with perfectly manicured gardens, a mansion that had been in the family for generations, and the kind of guest list that read like a who's who of Philadelphia society. Cordelia hadn't been invited, of course, but that was easily remedied. A small donation to the right charity, a mention to the right person that she'd love to meet the Whitmore family, and suddenly she had an invitation to celebrate the upcoming nuptials of Camden and Seraphina. She chose her outfit carefully, a classic navy dress that was elegant but not attention-grabbing, pearls that spoke of quiet wealth, the kind of look that would help her blend in with the other society wives. She needed to be present but not memorable, at least not until the right moment. The party was everything Seraphina had probably dreamed of. A string quartet played on the terrace, champagne flowed freely, and the future bride held court in a stunning white cocktail dress, her engagement ring catching the light as she gestured while telling stories to her admirers. Cordelia positioned herself strategically throughout the evening, making polite conversation, complimenting the gardens, playing the part of just another society wife enjoying a lovely party. She watched as Seraphina basked in the attention, as Camden's family welcomed her with genuine warmth, as everyone celebrated what they believed was a love story. Lysander wasn't there, of course. He couldn't risk being seen in public with Seraphina, especially not at her engagement party to another man. But Cordelia knew he was probably somewhere nearby, waiting for Seraphina to text him updates, maybe even watching from a distance. At exactly 8:30 p.m., Cordelia's phone buzzed with a text from Thaddeus. "It's time." Cordelia excused herself from her conversation and found a quiet corner of the garden where she could make a phone call without being overheard. When she returned to the party 5 minutes later, everything looked exactly the same, but Cordelia knew that in a matter of minutes, everything would change forever. She positioned herself near the main terrace, close enough to have a clear view of Seraphina, but far enough away not to seem suspicious. Camden Whitmore was just beginning to give a toast about finding true love when his phone rang. Camden glanced at it, frowning. "I'm sorry. This is my father. I should—" He answered the call, his expression shifting from mild annoyance to confusion to something that looked like horror. The conversation was brief, but Cordelia could see Camden's face going pale as he listened. When he hung up, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Camden?" Seraphina moved to his side, concern evident in her voice. "What's wrong? You look terrible." Camden stared at his fiancée for a long moment, and Cordelia could practically see the pieces falling into place in his mind. "That was my father. The FBI just raided Lysander Blackwood's investment firm. They arrested him for embezzlement and money laundering." Seraphina's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the stone terrace. The sound seemed to echo in the sudden silence as every guest turned to stare. "Who's Lysander Blackwood?" Camden continued, his voice getting louder. "Because according to my father, the FBI is looking for his co-conspirator, someone named Seraphina Cross, in connection with money laundering through something called SC Holdings, LLC. The color drained from Seraphina's face so completely that Cordelia almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I don't know what you're talking about," Seraphina stammered, but her voice was shaking and everyone could see the panic in her eyes. "You don't know?" Camden's voice was ice-cold now. "Because they also mentioned that Miss Cross has been involved in a romantic relationship with Mr. Blackwood, and that stolen client funds have been flowing through her accounts for months." The whispers started then, spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Cordelia watched as Camden's mother stepped forward, her face a mask of controlled fury. "I think," Mrs. Whitmore said in the kind of voice that could cut glass, "that you need to leave. Now." "Camden, please, I can explain." "Explain what?" Camden's voice cracked with emotion. "Explain how you've been having an affair with a married man? Explain how you've been living off stolen money? Explain how you were going to marry me while you were committing felonies?" Seraphina looked around desperately, but there was no sympathy in any of the faces staring back at her. These people had welcomed her into their circle, had been prepared to accept her as family, and now they were looking at her like she was something they'd scrape off their shoes. "Get out," Camden said quietly. Get out before I call the police myself. Seraphina stumbled backward, tears streaming down her face, mascara ruining her perfect makeup. She turned and ran toward the parking area, leaving behind a crowd of shocked guests and a shattered engagement. Cordelia quietly slipped away during the chaos, a small smile playing on her lips. As she walked to her car, her phone buzzed with another text from Thaddeus. Lysander has been arrested. FBI seized all accounts. Divorce papers being served tomorrow morning. Cordelia sat in her car for a moment, letting the satisfaction wash over her. Phase 1 was complete. Lysander was in custody. Seraphina was socially destroyed and facing criminal charges. And tomorrow the rest of her plan would unfold. She drove home to the house she'd shared with Lysander for 8 years. But for the first time in months, she wasn't coming home to a lie. She was coming home to prepare for the truth. Chapter 6: The Reckoning. Cordelia was having her morning coffee on the patio when she heard Lysander's car in the driveway. He'd made bail sometime during the night, probably using money stolen from his clients, she thought grimly. And now he was coming home to face the music. She heard the front door slam, heard him calling her name with an edge of panic in his voice that she'd never heard before. She took another sip of her coffee and waited. Cordelia. Lysander burst through the patio doors, still wearing the clothes he'd been arrested in, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his face pale and desperate. Thank God you're here. This is all a misunderstanding, a horrible mistake. I need you to call your old contacts at the prosecutor's office, see if... He stopped mid-sentence when he saw her face. Cordelia was smiling, but it wasn't the warm, loving smile he was used to. It was the smile of a predator who'd successfully cornered her prey. Sit down, Lysander, she said calmly, gesturing to the chair across from her. Cordelia, we don't have time for... Sit. Down. Something in her tone made him comply. He sat heavily in the chair, running his hands through his hair. This is insane. They're saying I embezzled money, that I was laundering funds through fake companies. It's ridiculous. I would never. SC Holdings LLC, Cordelia interrupted. Registered to Seraphina Cross, your mistress. Lysander froze. For a moment, the only sound was the chirping of birds in their garden. I don't know what you're talking about, he said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. Cordelia reached beside her chair and pulled out a thick folder. She opened it slowly, deliberately, and began laying out documents on the patio table between them. Bank records showing transfers from client accounts to SC Holdings, she said, placing down the first set of papers. Credit card receipts from restaurants and hotels where you took Seraphina while telling me you were working late. Another stack. Photos of you and Seraphina together, taken by the private investigator I hired 3 weeks ago. More papers. Documentation of the Cayman Islands account you thought I didn't know about. Another stack. With each document she placed on the table, Lysander's face grew paler. And my personal favorite, Cordelia continued. Recorded phone conversations between you and Seraphina discussing your exit strategy and how you were going to leave me with nothing while you two disappeared with millions of stolen money. Lysander stared at the evidence spread before him, and Cordelia could see the exact moment when he realized how completely, thoroughly trapped he was. How long have you known? He asked quietly. About the affair? 2 months? About the embezzlement? 6 weeks? About your plan to divorce me and disappear? 3 weeks? Why didn't you say anything? Cordelia leaned back in her chair, studying the man she'd been married to for 8 years. Because I wanted to make sure I had everything. Every account, every transaction, every lie you told. You see, Lysander, you made one crucial mistake. What's that? You forgot who I used to be. You got so comfortable thinking of me as your supportive little wife that you forgot I'm the forensic accountant who sent Marcus Chen to prison for 15 years for doing exactly what you've been doing. Lysander's shoulders sagged as the full weight of his situation hit him. What happens now? Now you're going to prison. The FBI has enough evidence to convict you 10 times over. Your business is gone, your assets are frozen, and your reputation is destroyed. Seraphina is facing charges as a co-conspirator, her engagement is off, and she's been completely ostracized from society. And us? Cordelia almost laughed. Us? Lysander, there is no us. There hasn't been an us for months, maybe years. You made that choice when you decided to steal from your clients and plan to abandon me with nothing. Cordelia, please. Please what? Please forgive you for systematically stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Please forgive you for having an affair with a woman half your age. Please forgive you for planning to divorce me and leave me penniless while you disappeared with your mistress. Lysander was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was broken. What do you want from me? Nothing, Cordelia said simply. I don't want anything from you, Lysander, because you have nothing left to give. You're going to spend the next 10 to 15 years in federal prison. Your law license is gone, your business is gone, your money is gone, and when you get out, you'll be a middle-aged ex-convict with no prospects and no one who trusts you. She stood up, gathering the documents back into their folder. I'm keeping the house, by the way, and the cars, and what's left of the legitimate money after restitution to your victims. It's all very legal. Thaddeus Kane is an excellent divorce attorney. Thaddeus Kane? But he's a friend from law school, yes. Funny how life works out sometimes. Lysander looked up at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked genuinely defeated. I never meant for it to go this far. Yes, you did, Cordelia said. You planned every step of this, Lysander. You just never planned for me to fight back. As she turned to go back into the house, Lysander called after her. Where will you go? What will you do? Cordelia paused in the doorway and looked back at him one last time. I'm going to rebuild my life. I'm going to restart my career. I'm going to remember who I was before I spent 8 years pretending to be someone else for your benefit. And us? Is there any chance that we could... Goodbye, Lysander. Cordelia walked into the house and closed the door behind her, leaving her husband alone on the patio with the wreckage of the life he'd destroyed through his own greed and betrayal. For the first time in months, she felt truly free. Chapter 7. The New Beginning. 6 months later, Cordelia sat in her new office, a sleek space in downtown Philadelphia with Reed Forensic Accounting etched in gold letters on the glass door. Her business had taken off faster than she'd expected. Apparently, word had gotten around the legal community about how thoroughly she'd dismantled her ex-husband's criminal enterprise, and now law firms were competing for her services. Lysander had been sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Seraphina had received 5 years and would be serving her time at a minimum security facility, though the social consequences had arguably been worse than the legal ones for her. The Whitmore family had made sure that everyone in their circle knew exactly what kind of person she really was. Cordelia was reviewing files for a new case when her assistant knocked on her door. Ms. Reed, Thaddeus Kane is here to see you. Send him in. Thaddeus walked into her office carrying takeout bags and wearing a smile that made her heart skip a beat. Over the past 6 months, he'd become more than just her attorney. He'd become her friend, her confidant, and lately, something that felt like it might be heading toward more. I brought lunch, he said, setting the bags on her conference table. Thai food from that place you like. You're spoiling me, Cordelia said, but she was smiling as she closed her laptop and joined him at the table. I have news, Thaddeus said as they unpacked the food. The restitution payments to Lysander's victims are complete. Everyone got their money back, plus interest. Good. They deserved that much at least. There's something else. Thaddeus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. This came to my office today. It's addressed to you. Cordelia took the envelope, recognizing Lysander's handwriting immediately. For a moment, she considered throwing it away without reading it, but curiosity won out. She opened it and unfolded a single sheet of prison stationery. Cordelia, I know I have no right to write to you, and I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to tell you that I understand now what I threw away. You gave me 8 years of your life, your career, your dreams, and I repaid you with betrayal and lies. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know that losing you was the worst consequence of everything I did. Worse than prison. Worse than losing everything else. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. I hope you're happy. I hope you're building the life you deserve. I'm sorry for everything. Lysander. Cordelia read the letter twice, then folded it back up. She felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no lingering affection. Lysander felt like a stranger now, someone from a different life. Everything okay? Thaddeus asked gently. Everything's perfect, Cordelia said, and meant it. She dropped the letter in the trash can beside her desk. Now, tell me about this new case you mentioned on the phone. For the next hour, they talked about work, about cases, about the future of her business. But there was an undercurrent to the conversation, a tension that had been building between them for weeks. Finally, as they were cleaning up the lunch containers, Thaddeus cleared his throat. Cordelia, there's something I need to tell you. She looked up at him, noting the nervous energy in his movements, the way he was avoiding her eyes. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I know the timing might not be perfect, but... He took a deep breath. I've been in love with you since law school. Cordelia set down the container she'd been holding, her heart suddenly racing. I know, Thaddeus continued quickly. I know you're just getting your life back, and I know you probably need time to figure out what you want. But I couldn't keep pretending that helping you through your divorce was purely professional for me. It wasn't. Every time I saw how badly Lysander had hurt you, every time I saw you rebuilding yourself from scratch, I fell a little more in love with the woman you are. Thaddeus. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I'm not asking you to feel the same way or to make any decisions right now. I just needed you to know, because hiding how I feel was starting to feel like another lie, and you've had enough lies to last a lifetime. Cordelia studied his face, the earnest expression, the vulnerability in his eyes, the way he was bracing himself for rejection. She thought about the woman she'd been 8 years ago, the one who'd been so focused on her career that she'd missed the signs that one of her best friends was in love with her. She thought about the woman she'd become during her marriage, the one who'd given up everything for a man who'd never deserved it. And she thought about the woman she was now, the one who'd rebuilt herself from the ground up and was finally ready to trust her own judgment again. Thaddeus, she said softly, and he looked up at her with hope and fear warring in his expression. She stepped closer to him, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. I'm scared, she admitted. I'm scared of trusting someone again, scared of making another mistake, scared of getting hurt. I would never hurt you, he said immediately. I know, she said, and realized she did know. She'd seen Thaddeus in action over the past 6 months, had seen his integrity, his kindness, his absolute dedication to protecting her interests even when it cost him sleep and sanity. I know you wouldn't. So what does that mean? Cordelia smiled, feeling a warmth spreading through her chest that she hadn't felt in years. It means I'd like to find out what this could be. Slowly, carefully, but yes, I'd like to try. The smile that spread across Thaddeus's face was worth every moment of fear, every second of doubt. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home to herself. Epilogue, 2 years later. The crying started at 3 a.m., as it had every night for the past 2 weeks. Cordelia groaned softly and started to get up, but Thaddeus was already moving. "I've got her," he whispered, pressing a gentle kiss to Cordelia's forehead. "You got the last 2 feedings." Cordelia watched as her husband picked up their 2-week-old daughter, Isabella, and began the practiced routine of checking her diaper, preparing her bottle, settling into the rocking chair by the window. Even sleep-deprived and wearing an old t-shirt, Thaddeus was the most beautiful sight she'd ever seen. "You're amazing," she murmured. "Says the woman who built $1 million business while pregnant," Thaddeus replied, expertly cradling Isabella while she took her bottle. "Reed Forensic Accounting is booked solid for the next 6 months." "Reed Kane Forensic Accounting?" Cordelia corrected with a smile. She'd officially changed her name after their wedding, but kept her maiden name for business. It felt like the perfect balance, honoring where she'd come from while embracing where she was going. The nursery was perfect, decorated in soft yellows and greens with handmade quilts from Thaddeus's mother, and a mobile that played gentle lullabies. It was everything Cordelia had dreamed of during those long years when she'd thought she was building a life with Lysander. But it was also better because it was real, built on truth, on genuine love, on partnership instead of deception. "Have I mentioned lately that I love you?" Thaddeus asked as Isabella finished her bottle and settled into sleep. "Only every day," Cordelia replied. "But I don't mind hearing it again." "I love you, Cordelia Reed Kane. I love our daughter. I love our life. And I love watching you become everything you were meant to be." As Thaddeus placed Isabella back in her crib and returned to bed, Cordelia thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago. Lost, betrayed, living a lie without even knowing it. She thought about the anger and pain that had motivated her revenge against Lysander and Seraphina, and how that revenge had ultimately led her back to herself. "Any regrets?" Thaddeus asked, as if reading her thoughts. Cordelia considered the question seriously. Did she regret the 8 years she'd spent married to Lysander? The career she'd put on hold? The dreams she'd deferred? The betrayal she'd endured? "No," she said finally. "Because if none of that had happened, I wouldn't be here now. I wouldn't have you. I wouldn't have Isabella. I wouldn't have learned how strong I really am." "Even Lysander?" Thaddeus asked gently. He knew she'd never read another letter from her ex-husband, though several had arrived over the past 2 years. "Especially Lysander," Cordelia said, "because he taught me the most important lesson of all, that I'm the only person responsible for my own happiness. I gave away my power once, but I'll never make that mistake again." Thaddeus pulled her closer, and Cordelia felt the deep contentment that came from being exactly where she belonged. Outside, Philadelphia was sleeping, but in this room, in this house, in this life she'd built from the ashes of her old one, everything was exactly as it should be. Sometimes the best revenge wasn't destroying your enemies. Sometimes it was building something so beautiful, so authentic, so completely yours, that their betrayal became the catalyst for your greatest happiness. As Cordelia drifted back to sleep in her husband's arms, with her daughter sleeping peacefully nearby, and her thriving business waiting for her in the morning, she couldn't help but smile. Lysander had tried to make her disappear. Instead, he'd helped her find herself. And that was the most perfect revenge of all. And that's how one woman turned the most devastating betrayal of her life into the foundation for everything she'd ever truly wanted. Cordelia thought Lysander was stealing her future, but he was actually clearing the path for the life she was meant to have. What did you think of Cordelia's strategic takedown? Could you have waited as long as she did to reveal everything you knew? And was her revenge satisfying enough? Or would you have wanted her to go even further? Sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up doing us the biggest favor. They force us to remember who we really are. Cordelia spent 8 years being someone else's idea of the perfect wife, but it took losing everything to rediscover the formidable woman she'd always been underneath. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this story. Have you ever had to rebuild your life from scratch? Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was living a completely different life behind your back? And most importantly, if you know someone who thinks they truly know their partner after years together, share this story with them. Sometimes the person sleeping next to you is a complete stranger. Don't forget to subscribe to Truth Bombs and hit that notification bell so you never miss stories like this one. We uncover shocking family secrets, devastating betrayals, and ultimate comebacks every single week. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Until next time, remember, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming so successful, so happy, so completely yourself that your betrayer's actions become the greatest gift they ever gave you. I'll see you in the next Truth Bomb.